I stood frozen in my own living room as my daughter-in-law Jessica shoved the nursing home brochure into my trembling hands, her voice dripping with contempt, while 30 guests watched in silence at what was supposed to be my 68th birthday celebration. "We've already signed the papers, Harley," Jessica announced, her smile cold and practiced. "You're going to Sunset Hills next Monday. We need this house for the baby." My fingers went numb around the glossy pamphlet. The room tilted. Somewhere behind me, a champagne glass shattered against the hardwood floor I'd polished that morning. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. My grandson Tommy, just 7 years old, tugged at my dress, confused, but Jessica pulled him away sharply. "Before I continue, I need to tell you something. If this story has found you today, please don't leave yet. Hit that like button if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. And drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Whether you're in Texas or Tokyo, I want to know my voice has reached you. Because what I'm about to share changed everything." My name is Harley Smith. I'm 68 years old, a widow of 12 years. And until that moment, I believed I'd built something beautiful, a family, a home, a legacy. I raised 3 children in the house, my late husband Robert and I, purchased 42 years ago. I thought I'd die in that house, surrounded by love and memories. Instead, I was being erased like a mistake. Let me take you back, 6 months before that birthday, because betrayal doesn't happen overnight. It grows in silence. In small cruelties, you convince yourself you're imagining, in the moments you ignore, because you desperately want to believe your family still loves you. 6 months earlier, Marcus brought Jessica home as his fiancée. She worked in real estate, wore expensive clothes, and smiled with teeth so white they looked unnatural. Something about her made my skin prickle, but I pushed the feeling down. Marcus seemed happy. That's what mattered. I told myself. The wedding was quick. Too quick. 3 months of engagement, a ceremony at City Hall, barely any family present. Jessica said she wanted intimate and meaningful, but it felt rushed, secretive. I paid for the reception dinner because Marcus mentioned they were saving for a house. I was happy to help. He was my son. The shift started small. A comment here, a suggestion there. "This house is so big for just you, Mom," Jessica said one Sunday, walking through my rooms with an appraising eye. "Have you ever thought about downsizing?" I laughed it off. "Robert and I raised 3 kids here. There's plenty of room for grandchildren to visit." Her smile tightened. "Of course. I just meant all this upkeep must be exhausting at your age." At my age. The phrase stung, but I let it pass. Then she started rearranging things. My furniture, my kitchen cabinets, my photographs. She'd visit and help organize, moving Robert's favorite chair from the window, boxing up family photos she called clutter, replacing my cotton curtains with something modern and cold. "Trust me, Harley," she'd say, patting my hand like I was a child. "I stage homes professionally. I know what works." But it wasn't her home to stage. Marcus changed too. My warm, thoughtful son became distant. He'd visit but spend the entire time on his phone. When I tried to talk to him, really talk, he'd cut me off with, "Mom, Jessica and I are busy. Can this wait?" It never used to wait. We used to talk for hours. At family dinners, Jessica dominated conversations, interrupting me mid-sentence, correcting my stories, rolling her eyes when I spoke. Marcus never defended me. He'd just stare at his plate, silent. "Harley, you've told that story 100 times," Jessica said once, her voice sugary but sharp. "Everyone's heard about Robert's fishing trip." My daughter Linda, visiting from Arizona, frowned. "I like Mom's stories." Jessica smiled. "Of course, they're lovely. I just think we should let others share too." But Jessica was the only one who kept talking. The comments about senior living started casually. Jessica would mention a friend's mother who loved her retirement community, or an article about elderly people thriving in assisted care. She'd leave brochures on my coffee table, glossy pamphlets showing smiling seniors playing cards, as if that was living. "Just browsing options," she'd say when I asked. "It's good to plan ahead." I didn't want to plan for that. I wanted to stay in my home, the home Robert and I built, where his presence still lingered in every corner. One afternoon, I found Jessica and Marcus in my bedroom, measuring the walls. "What are you doing?" I asked, my heart pounding. Jessica jumped, startled, then recovered with that practiced smile. "Oh, just getting ideas for when you redecorate. This room has such potential." But I hadn't mentioned redecorating, and they were measuring my bedroom like they already owned it. That night, I called Linda. "Something's wrong," I told her. "Jessica is, I don't know how to explain it." Linda sighed. "Mom, she's probably just enthusiastic. You know how real estate people are. Give her a chance." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to be wrong. My youngest, David, was deployed overseas with the army. I couldn't burden him with vague worries when he had enough to handle. So I stayed quiet, swallowing my unease. The isolation crept in slowly. Jessica would schedule family events without telling me, then apologize sweetly. "Oh, I thought Marcus told you. My mistake." Friends stopped calling because Jessica had told them I was overwhelmed and needed space. My weekly card game with Dorothy and the girls was interrupted when Jessica called Dorothy, claiming I'd had a fall and couldn't make it. I hadn't fallen. I didn't even know about the call until Dorothy showed up at my door. "Worried." Jessica said, "You were hurt," Dorothy said, examining me. She sounded so concerned. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "I'm fine, there was no fall." Dorothy's face darkened with understanding. But what could we do? Prove Jessica was lying? To what end? Marcus was married to her. She was family now. Late one night, 3 months into the marriage, I woke to voices downstairs. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. "She's not going to just hand it over, Marcus." Jessica's voice, sharp and impatient. "I know, but we can't just—" Marcus sounded uncertain, conflicted. "Can't what? She's almost 70. This house is wasted on her. We need it. We have a baby coming. We're drowning in debt, and your mother is sitting on nearly $1 million in property value." My breath caught. Baby? Debt? She's my mother, Jess. And she's old and alone. We're doing her a favor. Those places are nice, she'll make friends, and we'll finally have something of our own, instead of renting that terrible apartment. Silence. Then Marcus. "How do we convince her?" Jessica's laugh was cold. "Leave that to me." I stood frozen at the top of those stairs, my hand pressed to my mouth to keep from crying out. My son, my boy, talking about taking my home like it was already decided. I backed away silently, returned to my room, and sat on the edge of the bed Robert and I shared for 30 years. In the darkness, I whispered to him, needing his strength. "What do I do, Robert? What do I do?" The next morning, Jessica smiled at me over coffee, asking if I'd slept well. I smiled back and said yes, but something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't imagining things. This was real. This was a plan, and I was the obstacle they intended to remove. 2 weeks after that midnight conversation, Jessica insisted on taking me to my routine checkup with Dr. Patterson. I didn't want her there, but she was insistent. "I want to help, Mom," she said, using that word. Mom like a weapon disguised as affection. "You shouldn't go alone. What if the doctor says something important and you forget?" I never forgot. My mind was sharp, but arguing would make me seem defensive. Difficult. So I agreed. Dr. Patterson was young, fresh out of residency, eager and earnest. Jessica greeted him warmly, establishing rapport while I sat silent in the patient chair. The appointment started normally, blood pressure, reflexes, routine questions. Then Jessica leaned forward, her face arranged in concern. "Doctor, I'm so glad I could be here today. I've been worried about Harley." My spine stiffened. Dr. Patterson looked between us. "Worried how?" "Well," Jessica sighed. "Small things, but they're adding up. Last week she left a pot on the stove, and it burned completely. The smoke alarm woke her up." I opened my mouth to protest. That never happened. But Jessica continued smoothly. "And she got lost, driving to the grocery store. Marcus had to go find her. She was 3 towns over, confused about where she was." "That's not true," I said, my voice tight. "I took a different route because of construction." Jessica touched my arm, her fingers cold. Mom, you were upset. You might not remember clearly. Dr. Patterson made notes. I watched his pen move across the paper, documenting lies as facts. Has there been any confusion about medications? He asked. Yes, Jessica said before I could answer. She's been taking her blood pressure pills twice some days, forgetting others. I had to organize a pill case for her. Another lie. I managed my medications perfectly, but how could I prove that? It was her word against mine, and she sounded so concerned, so credible. Mrs. Smith, Dr. Patterson said gently, these signs can indicate early cognitive decline. I'd like to recommend some assessments, memory tests, perhaps a consultation with a neurologist. I don't need tests, I said, hearing the tremor in my voice and hating it. I'm fine, she's exaggerating. Jessica's hand tightened on my arm. See, doctor, she gets defensive. That's also concerning. I felt trapped. Anything I said would be twisted into evidence of confusion or decline. Silence made me seem passive, compliant. Speaking up made me seem agitated, irrational. Dr. Patterson scheduled follow-up appointments, mentioning care options and support systems in that careful tone medical professionals use when they're preparing you for bad news. After the appointment, Jessica suggested coffee at a nearby cafe. I wanted to go home, but she linked her arm through mine like we were friends. At the cafe, she ordered us lattes and spoke in that same concerned tone. Harley, I hope you're not upset. I'm only trying to help. You lied, I said quietly. Those things didn't happen. Her face shifted. Just for a second, something cold and calculating flashing behind her eyes. Then the mask returned. Mom, you're under a lot of stress, living alone in that big house, managing everything yourself. Maybe you don't remember these incidents. That's okay. That's why Marcus and I are here. I don't want your help. Marcus is worried sick, she continued, as if I hadn't spoken. We've been talking, and we think something needs to change soon, for your safety. There it was. The threat delivered with a smile over coffee. I didn't finish my latte. I sat there, across from this woman who had married my son and was now systematically dismantling my life, and I realized something crucial. She was smarter than me at this game. She knew how to manipulate doctors, how to build a narrative, how to make me look unstable while she looked caring. But I wasn't beaten yet. That evening, alone in my bedroom, I unlocked the small fireproof box I kept in my closet. Inside were Robert's letters from when he traveled for work, our marriage certificate, the deed to the house, his military service records. At the bottom was a letter he'd written me during his final hospital stay, knowing he wouldn't make it home. My hands shook as I unfolded it, reading his familiar handwriting. Harley, my love, when you read this, I'll be gone, but you won't be alone. You're stronger than you know. We built something beautiful together. Our family, our home, our life. Don't let anyone take what we built. Stand your ground, fight if you have to. I'll be with you, always. I pressed the letter to my chest, tears finally falling. I won't let them take it, Robert, I whispered. I promise. 2 weeks after the doctor's appointment, an official-looking envelope arrived in my mailbox. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Patterson and Associates, attorneys at law. The letterhead was embossed, expensive. Inside, formal language requested my presence at a family meeting to discuss residential arrangements and estate planning in light of recent health concerns. The letter was signed by both Jessica and Marcus. I read phrases that made my blood run cold. Power of attorney, conservatorship consideration, property transfer discussion, declining cognitive function, safety concerns necessitating immediate intervention. They were building a legal case. This wasn't just pressure or manipulation anymore. They were trying to take control of my life, my assets, my autonomy. They wanted me, declared incompetent. I sank onto my couch, the letter fluttering from my fingers. For a long moment, I couldn't move, couldn't think. This was real. This was happening. My son had signed this letter. My son was trying to have me declared unfit. I called Linda, my voice shaking. Honey, I need you to listen. But Linda was distracted. Her toddler was screaming in the background. Her husband was arguing with someone on his phone. "Mom, can this wait? We're dealing with some stuff here." "No," I said firmly. "It can't wait. Jessica and Marcus are trying to put me in a nursing home. They sent me legal papers." Linda sighed, that particular sigh that meant she was only half listening. "Mom, I'm sure it's not like that. Jessica probably just wants to make sure you have options. She works in real estate. She's practical about these things." "Linda, they're talking about conservatorship. Isn't that a bit extreme?" "Look, Mom, you're not getting any younger. Maybe having some help isn't the worst idea. I'm pregnant again, dealing with marriage counseling, and I just can't take on more right now. Can you try to appreciate what Jessica's doing? She's trying to help." The line went quiet. I realized Linda wasn't going to support me. She was overwhelmed with her own troubles, and I was just another problem she didn't have the energy to handle. "Okay," I said softly. "Take care of yourself, honey." After I hung up, I sat in the silence of my home, the home they wanted to take, and felt more alone than I had since Robert died. But then something shifted inside me. Alone didn't mean helpless, and silent didn't mean defeated. I pulled out the business card I'd kept for years. Tucked in my address book, Gerald Morrison, attorney at law. He'd been Robert's friend, his hunting buddy, the best man at our wedding 42 years ago. He was semi-retired now, mostly playing golf and spoiling his grandchildren. But I knew he'd remember me. I knew he'd help. My hands steadied as I dialed his number. "Gerald Morrison," his familiar gravelly voice answered. "Gerald, it's Harley Smith, Robert's wife. I need your help." There was a pause, then his tone shifted to sharp attention. "Harley? What's wrong?" "Everything," I said. And then I told him. 3 days later, I sat across from Gerald in his home office, surrounded by law books and framed photos of his family. He'd read the letter from Patterson and Associates. He'd listened to my account of the past 6 months. His face had grown darker with each detail. "Harley," he said finally, "this is elder abuse, financial exploitation, and they're setting up a conservatorship case that could strip you of your rights entirely. Can they do that?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "If they build a strong enough case, yes." The doctor's appointment was strategic, documenting alleged cognitive issues. The legal letter establishes their concern on record. If they push this to court and you don't have representation, a judge might rule in their favor, especially if you seem confused or unable to defend yourself. But I'm not confused. I'm completely competent. I know that, but the system doesn't always protect the vulnerable. It protects whoever has the better lawyer and the better story. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "So here's my question, Harley. Do you want to fight back, or do you want to survive?" I thought of Robert's letter. I thought of Jessica's cold smile. I thought of 42 years in this house, raising my babies, loving my husband, building a life. "Both," I said. "I want both." Gerald smiled, a fierce smile I remembered from when he and Robert used to compete at everything. "Good. Then we fight smart, and we fight to win." Over the next 2 weeks, Gerald worked quietly. He started with background checks, digging into Jessica's history. What he found was damning. Jessica had been married twice before. Both marriages ended in bitter divorces involving property disputes. Her first husband claimed she'd married him for his inheritance, then pushed for divorce once she'd established community property claims. The second husband filed complaints alleging she'd manipulated him into adding her name to his house deed, then filed for separation within a year. There was a pattern. Jessica targeted men with assets, married quickly and maneuvered for financial gain. Her real estate career looked successful on the surface, but Gerald found multiple complaints filed with the state board. Aggressive tactics, misrepresentation, pressure sales targeting elderly clients. She'd been reprimanded twice, narrowly avoiding license suspension. "She's a predator," Gerald said bluntly, showing me the documents, "and your son walked right into her trap." "Marcus isn't innocent," I said, the words bitter in my mouth. "He signed that letter." "Marcus is drowning in debt she created," Gerald replied. "Look at this." He showed me financial records he'd obtained through legal channels. Credit cards maxed out at over $80,000. Car loans for 2 luxury vehicles they couldn't afford. Jessica's real estate commissions were inconsistent, and Marcus's salary couldn't cover their lifestyle. They were 3 months behind on rent. The house isn't about space for a baby, Gerald said. It's about survival. They need your property to liquidate their debt, and Jessica knows how to make it happen. I stared at the evidence, feeling sick. My son was being manipulated too, but he was also complicit. He'd chosen her. He'd signed papers against me. What do we do? I asked. We document everything, Gerald said, and we play along until we have enough evidence to bury them. He gave me a small recording device, legal in our state with single-party consent. Wear this during every interaction, record everything. For the next 3 weeks, I became a spy in my own life. I recorded conversations, documented incidents, kept a detailed journal with dates and witnesses. Gerald advised me to act compliant, defeated. Let them think they're winning, he said. Arrogant people make mistakes. The recordings were devastating. Jessica's mask dropped when Marcus wasn't around. She'd make cutting comments, mock my age, call me the obstacle, and dead weight. Once when she thought I was napping, I caught her on the phone with a friend. I'm almost there, Jessica said, her voice gleeful. The old lady's cracking. Once we get her into Sunset Hills, we can sell this place for at least $800,000. Finally, we'll have breathing room. Her friend laughed. I can't believe she's just letting you. She doesn't have a choice, Jessica replied. I've got doctors on record, legal papers filed. Marcus is on board. She's trapped. I listened from the top of the stairs, the recording device capturing every word, and felt a cold fury settle over me. She thought I was trapped. She thought she'd won. She had no idea what was coming. Gerald reviewed all the evidence, recordings, financial documents, her history of manipulation. We've got her, he said with satisfaction. But we need patience. The nursing home plan has to proceed further before we strike. The deeper she commits to this scheme, the harder she'll fall. How much further? I asked, exhausted from pretending, from being insulted in my own home. Until she announces it publicly, Gerald said. Until there are witnesses. Until she's so confident she can't backtrack. Then we flip the board. The family meeting at Patterson and Associates was scheduled for a Wednesday afternoon. I dressed carefully that morning, choosing a soft cardigan and simple slacks, looking vulnerable, harmless. Gerald had coached me extensively. Let them talk, he'd said. Look confused when appropriate. Ask gentle questions. Show uncertainty. We want them overconfident. The law office was cold and sterile, all glass and chrome. Jessica and Marcus were already there, sitting with 2 attorneys I'd never met. Jessica wore a navy suit, looking professional and concerned. Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. They presented their case like a business proposal. Jessica had prepared a folder, printed emails, photographs, the doctor's notes. She narrated a story of my supposed decline with practiced sorrow. We're worried about Mom, she said. The word mom making my skin crawl. She's forgetting things, getting confused. Last month she left the stove on overnight. Never happened. She's withdrawn from friends, stopped attending church. Because you told everyone I needed space. She's fallen twice. Never. The attorneys listened sympathetically. They slid papers across the table, nursing home brochures, power of attorney documents, property transfer agreements. Mrs. Smith, the lead attorney said gently, we know this is difficult, but your family loves you and wants what's best. These arrangements will ensure you're safe and cared for. I looked at the papers, then at Jessica's expectant face. I let my hands tremble slightly as I picked up a pen. Where do I sign? I asked, my voice small and defeated. Jessica's face lit up with triumph. Marcus exhaled in relief. But I didn't sign. I set the pen down. I just have a few questions first. I asked about costs, about the timeline, about how property transfers worked. I played confused, needing clarification. The attorneys explained patiently, walking into every trap Gerald had prepared. Finally, I nodded. Can I have a few days to think about this? It's a lot to process. Jessica's smile tightened, but she couldn't refuse in front of the attorneys. Of course, Mom. Take your time. We just want you to be comfortable with the decision. As we left the office, Jessica linked her arm through mine, walking me to my car. You're making the right choice, Harley, she whispered. This is really for the best, and don't worry about the house. Marcus and I will take good care of it. I drove home slowly, my hands steady on the wheel, despite the performance I'd just given. Once inside, I locked the door, went to my bedroom, and pulled out my laptop. Gerald and I had work to do. That evening, I did something I'd been avoiding. I called David overseas, finally telling him everything. The manipulation, the legal threats, the scheme to take the house. His response was immediate and volcanic. Mom, what? Are you serious? Marcus is doing this. Jessica is driving it, I said. But Marcus signed the papers. David swore, a string of words that would have made me scold him under normal circumstances. I'm coming home. I'll request emergency leave. David, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You're my mother. Nobody's taking your home. Nobody's putting you anywhere. I'll be there in 48 hours. After we hung up, I sat in Robert's chair, looking around the living room we'd furnished together. I touched the walls we'd painted, the floors we'd refinished. Every corner held memories. First steps, birthday parties, quiet evenings reading by the fireplace. They won't take this, Robert, I whispered. I promised you. I opened my laptop and began drafting a document Gerald had outlined, a detailed account of everything, with dates, witnesses, and evidence. It would serve as both testimony and protection, ensuring that even if something happened to me, the truth would be documented. The nursing home tour was scheduled for Friday morning. Jessica picked me up at 9, her cheerfulness grating against my raw nerves. You're going to love Sunset Hills, she chattered as she drove. They have activities, restaurant-style dining, even a library. I said nothing, watching familiar streets pass by, memorizing the route away from my neighborhood, away from home. Sunset Hills was exactly as I'd feared. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of disinfectant trying to mask something sadder underneath. The lobby was decorated like a hotel, but it couldn't hide what this place was, a waiting room for death. Jessica greeted the director warmly, shaking hands like she was closing a real estate deal. Which, in a way, she was. Mrs. Smith, welcome, the director said, her smile professional and practiced. Let me show you around. We walked through common areas where residents sat in wheelchairs, some playing cards, others staring blankly at a television. Some looked content. Others looked lost. Jessica kept up a running commentary, narrating my future. Your room would be in the east wing. You'd have a lovely view of the courtyard. Meals are served at set times, breakfast at 7:30, lunch at noon, dinner at 5:30. There are activities every day. Bingo, crafts, movie nights. I listened to her describe a life of schedules and supervision, where my autonomy would evaporate, where I'd need permission to leave, where my belongings would be condensed to fit in one small room. Every word Jessica spoke painted a picture of confinement disguised as care. She talked about the structured daily routine, as if regimentation was a benefit rather than a prison. She described meal times with enthusiasm. You'll never have to cook again. As though I hadn't spent 40 years perfecting recipes my family loved, as though my kitchen wasn't the heart of my home. She pointed out the activities calendar posted on a bulletin board. Bingo on Tuesdays, chair yoga on Thursdays, movie nights on Saturdays, as if these manufactured social events could replace the organic life I'd built. I watched other residents as we walked. Some participated in a craft activity, gluing cotton balls onto construction paper. Others sat motionless in wheelchairs, lined against the walls, staring at nothing. A television played a game show. Nobody was watching. The volume was too loud, compensating for hearing loss, creating a constant background noise that felt oppressive. Jessica kept up her cheerful narration, pointing out features like a realtor showing a property. The nurse's station is centrally located for quick response times. There's an emergency call button in every room. The dining area has multiple seating options. She made it sound appealing. But all I heard was surveillance. lack of privacy, loss of choice. The director showed us a sample room, small, maybe 12 by 14 feet. It contained a twin bed, a narrow dresser, one chair, and a small closet. There was a bathroom, barely large enough to turn around in. A single window looked out onto a parking lot. Residents can personalize their spaces with photographs and small decorative items, the director said warmly. We encourage making it feel like home. But it wasn't home. It was a cell with cheerful paint and commercial carpet. My entire life, 4 decades of accumulated memories, furniture Robert and I had chosen together. My mother's china, my children's artwork, Robert's books, my garden tools, all of it would have to be discarded or distributed. I'd be reduced to whatever could fit in this tiny space. How much does this cost? I asked, my voice steady despite the sick feeling in my stomach. The director smiled, accustomed to this question. She quoted the figure with practiced ease, as if the number wasn't staggering. $6,500 monthly. That includes room, board, basic care and activities. Additional services like medication management or physical therapy are extra. I did the math instantly. Nearly $80,000 annually. My Social Security wouldn't come close. I'd have to drain my savings, the money Robert and I had carefully accumulated over decades, intended for emergencies or to leave to our children. Jessica didn't flinch. She didn't gasp or express concern about the cost. Her face remained calm, pleasant, interested. She'd already calculated it. My Social Security plus savings would cover it for perhaps 2 years, maybe 3, if they were frugal with my money. Then they'd sell the house, using my own equity to keep me imprisoned here while they pocketed the remaining profit. It was a perfect financial trap. My assets would fund my own confinement until there was nothing left. That seems very reasonable for the level of care provided, Jessica said smoothly, as if she'd be paying it herself, as if it were her money being discussed. The director continued the tour, showing us the dining hall, the common areas, the small library with its outdated books. Jessica asked questions about visitation policies, about how often family typically visited. The director's answer was telling, it varies. Some families come weekly, others monthly. We encourage regular visits, of course, but we understand everyone has busy lives. Translation. Once residents were deposited here, families often disappeared, easing their guilt with occasional obligatory visits. During a moment when Jessica was distracted, talking to staff about admission paperwork and move-in procedures, I found myself alone in the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere a television blared. I could smell lunch being prepared. Institutional food, bland and overcooked. An elderly woman approached me, moving slowly with a walker. She was thin, her cardigan hanging loose on her frame. Her white hair was neatly styled, her face heavily lined but alert. Her name tag read Margaret. She looked at me with knowing eyes, eyes that had seen other women in my position, standing in this hallway, contemplating their futures. "Don't do it, honey," she whispered urgently, her voice low and intense. She glanced around to make sure no staff members were within earshot. "Don't let them put you here." Her words hit me like cold water. I'd been maintaining composure, playing my role, but her directness cracked something inside me. "I don't have a choice," I said, partly testing her, partly wanting to hear her story, needing to understand what awaited me if I failed to fight back. "There's always a choice," Margaret insisted, her grip tightening on her walker. I didn't know that until it was too late. I didn't fight when I should have. My daughter seemed so concerned, so caring. She said it was temporary. Just until I recovered from my hip surgery. That was 3 years ago. Her voice cracked slightly. I could see tears forming in her eyes. "She sold my house while I was here recovering, said the proceeds would fund my care, that it was the responsible thing to do. She spent my savings. I don't even know on what. Shopping, vacations, paying off her debts. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. I can't leave now. I have no home to return to, no money to rent an apartment. I'm trapped." I felt sick. This was my future, if Jessica succeeded. This exact scenario. Margaret's eyes filled with tears that she blinked back quickly, maintaining her dignity even as she revealed her devastation. I had a beautiful garden. Roses I'd tended for 20 years. A kitchen where I baked every Sunday. Neighbors I'd known for decades. Friends who used to stop by for coffee. All gone. Here, I'm just a room number. I'm Mrs. Patterson in 237. Nobody knows who I was before. Nobody cares that I taught school for 35 years, that I raised 4 children, that I had a life. Her words painted exactly what I feared: erasure, invisibility, the reduction of a full life to a bed and a meal schedule. You still have time, Margaret said urgently, her papery hand suddenly gripping my wrist with surprising strength. Don't give up your home. Don't trust family who are too eager to help. Document everything. Get a lawyer. Fight back. Once you're here, you're invisible. Nobody listens. Nobody cares. You become warehoused, waiting. She leaned closer, her voice dropping even lower. Half the people here don't need to be here. Their families just didn't want to be bothered. It was easier to stick us somewhere safe than to actually care for us or respect our wishes. Don't become one of us, honey. Don't let them erase you. Jessica's voice called from down the hall, sharp with artificial concern. Mom, where'd you go? We need to finish the paperwork discussion. Margaret squeezed my hand one final time, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so frail-looking. Her eyes locked onto mine with fierce intensity. Fight, honey. Whatever it takes, don't go gentle into their plans. Rage if you have to. Survive. On the drive home, Jessica was practically glowing. That went well, don't you think? The staff seemed lovely. You'd be very happy there. I stared out the window, Margaret's words echoing. Once you're here, you're invisible. When would I move? I asked quietly. We're thinking right after your birthday, Jessica said. We've already contacted a moving company, and I've been staging the house for sale. We should list it by mid-month. My birthday. Of course. She was planning to announce it at my birthday party, using social pressure and public declaration to seal my fate. It was brilliant, in a cruel way. Once announced in front of family and friends, I'd look unreasonable or irrational for refusing. Who's invited to this party? I asked. Oh, everyone. Extended family, neighbors, some of your old friends. It'll be a lovely celebration. A celebration of my displacement. My erasure. That evening, I met with Gerald again, telling him about the tour, about Margaret's warning, about Jessica's timeline. The party is the trap, I said. She's going to announce it publicly. Gerald nodded, which is perfect for us. Public declarations are hard to retract. The more witnesses, the better. But Harley, are you ready for this? Once we counterstrike, there's no going back. Your relationship with Marcus will be severely damaged, maybe permanently. I thought about Marcus avoiding my eyes at the law office. I thought about him signing papers to have me declared incompetent. I thought about the little boy who used to curl up in my lap, who called me his best friend, who promised he'd always protect me. He damaged it first, I said quietly. I'm just protecting myself. Gerald pulled out a folder. Then let's make sure you're protected. Inside were documents he'd prepared, a cease and desist letter, a police report ready to file for elder abuse and financial exploitation, evidence packages for the state bar regarding Jessica's ethics violations, and most importantly, legal documentation proving the house was held in an irrevocable trust Robert had established before his death. Robert set this up? I asked, stunned. He was smart. He wanted to protect you and the property. The trust has very specific terms. The house cannot be sold or transferred without approval from the trustee, which is you, and even then, only under specific circumstances that benefit you. Jessica's entire legal strategy is built on a false assumption. She can't take the house. She never could. I held the papers, seeing Robert's signature at the bottom, dated just weeks before he died. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known I'd need this protection. What do we do at the party? I asked. Gerald smiled, that fierce smile. We let her make her announcement, let her commit fully in front of witnesses. Then you make yours. The week before my birthday, the house buzzed with preparations. Jessica came over daily, decorating, arranging catering, playing the dutiful daughter-in-law for anyone watching. She was in complete control, orchestrating every detail. I played my part, passive, compliant, a little confused when appropriate. I thanked her for her help. I nodded when she mentioned the party would have important news to share. Behind the scenes, Gerald finalized everything. David arrived home, his military bearing and protective fury a comfort. He moved into my guest room temporarily, his presence making Jessica visibly uncomfortable. "What's David doing here?" she asked, her smile strained. "His mother needed him," David replied coldly, "so I came." Linda called, finally sensing something was wrong. "Mom, David says there's trouble. What's happening?" I told her everything, the full story, with evidence. This time she listened. Really listened. "Oh my God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have helped sooner." "You're helping now," I said. "Come to the party if you can. I need you there." The night before my birthday, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my bedroom, surrounded by 42 years of memories, looking at photographs of Robert, of my babies, of Christmas mornings, and graduations, and ordinary beautiful moments. I touched the walls. Robert painted. I walked through rooms we'd furnished together. I stood in the kitchen where we'd cooked thousands of meals, where we'd laughed and argued and made up. This was my home, my life, my history. Tomorrow, I would fight for it. I dressed carefully that morning, a blue dress Robert had always loved, my mother's pearl necklace, lipstick applied with steady hands. I looked in the mirror and saw not a confused old woman, but a survivor, a fighter. Jessica arrived early, her energy manic with excitement. She was so close to victory, she could taste it. "Happy birthday, Mom," she sang, kissing my cheek. "Today's going to be special." "Yes," I agreed calmly. "It certainly will be." Guests began arriving at 2. Extended family, neighbors, some friends I hadn't seen in months. Dorothy hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'm here, whatever you need." The house filled with people, with laughter and conversation. Jessica fluttered around, playing hostess in my home. Marcus looked uncomfortable, drinking beer too quickly. David stood near me like a guard, his eyes tracking Jessica's every move. At 3 o'clock, Jessica tapped her champagne glass, calling for attention. The room quieted. Everyone turned to watch. Here it was, the trap. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Harley's birthday," Jessica began, her voice warm and practiced. "We're so grateful to have you here because today isn't just a celebration, it's also an important announcement about Harley's future." The room was silent. I stood still, watching her perform. As many of you know, Harley has been struggling lately. She's had some health concerns, some memory issues. It's been difficult to watch, but Marcus and I have been working hard to find the best solution. She pulled out the Sunset Hills brochure, holding it up like evidence. "We found a wonderful assisted living facility called Sunset Hills. The staff is amazing, the amenities are beautiful, and we've made the decision, with Harley's doctors and legal advisors, that she'll be moving there next Monday." The words hung in the air like poison. I watched Jessica's mouth move, forming sentences that would reshape my entire existence, and felt the room shift around me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some guests looked genuinely shocked, hands flying to their mouths. Others nodded with what looked like sympathy, their faces arranged in expressions of understanding. My neighbor Patricia reached for her husband's hand. My cousin Ellen's eyes went wide. I could see them processing, calculating, deciding how to react to this bombshell announcement. Jessica paused for effect, letting the shock settle, giving people time to absorb what she'd just declared. She was skilled at this, reading a room, manipulating emotions, controlling the narrative. She'd probably rehearsed this speech multiple times, perfecting her tone, her pauses, her facial expressions. This wasn't spontaneous. This was choreographed cruelty. She continued, warming to her performance like an actress who'd finally found her spotlight. "We know this is incredibly hard, and believe me, Marcus and I have agonized over this choice for weeks. But the reality is that Harley needs professional care now. Her doctors have expressed serious concerns about her living alone. There have been incidents, falls, confusion, medication mistakes, things that could become dangerous if we don't intervene." More murmurs. I saw heads nodding. Jessica had poisoned the well perfectly. planting seeds of doubt about my competence that were now blooming in full view. "Marcus and I will be taking over the house," she announced, her voice gaining confidence with each word. "We desperately need the space for our growing family. With the baby coming, our current apartment is just too small. And honestly, this beautiful home is far too much for Harley to maintain anyway. The yard work, the repairs, the upkeep, it's overwhelming for someone her age." She gestured around the room, as if presenting evidence, as if the very existence of my home proved I was incapable of caring for it. Never mind that I'd maintained it for over 4 decades. Never mind that every flower bed was weeded, every room was clean, every surface polished. She was rewriting reality right before everyone's eyes. She touched Marcus's arm then, pulling him close in a gesture of united concern. He stood rigid beside her, his face pale, avoiding eye contact with me. I wondered if he felt sick. I hoped he did. "This is genuinely what's best for everyone involved," Jessica continued, her voice dripping with false compassion. "Harley will be safe and properly cared for by trained professionals who understand her needs. She'll have activities, companionship with others her age, 24-hour medical supervision, and we'll be able to provide properly for our baby, give our child the space and stability they deserve. It's a solution that serves everyone's best interests." The way she said best interests made my skin crawl, as if my interests included being warehoused in an institution, as if my desires were irrelevant to this equation, as if I were already an object to be managed rather than a person with autonomy and rights. The room erupted in murmurs, voices overlapping as guests processed this dramatic announcement. Some approached me with sympathy, their faces creased with concern. "Oh, Harley, we had no idea you were struggling," someone said. "This must be so difficult for you," another offered. They meant well, but their pity felt suffocating. Others looked at Jessica with approval, even admiration. I could read their thoughts in their expressions. What a devoted daughter-in-law, making such difficult decisions, taking on such responsibility. They saw her as self-sacrificing, caring, mature beyond her years. She'd positioned herself as the hero of this story, the responsible adult, making tough choices for an aging woman who could no longer care for herself. My friend Dorothy looked stricken, her eyes darting between Jessica and me, clearly sensing something wrong but uncertain how to intervene. My cousin Robert Jr. frowned, looking confused, but most people seemed to accept Jessica's narrative without question. Why wouldn't they? She was young, articulate, seemingly concerned. She had medical authority backing her claims. She had legal documentation. She had answers to every question, explanations for every concern. Jessica was smiling now, radiant with triumph. Her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. She'd done it. She'd announced her takeover in front of 30 witnesses, making it real, making it official, making it nearly impossible for me to refuse without seeming difficult or irrational. Publicly announced, witnesses present, the plan sealed. This was her checkmate moment. I could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on me. Everyone was watching, waiting for my response. They expected tears, perhaps, or grateful acceptance, or confused agreement. They expected me to be the elderly woman Jessica had portrayed, diminished, incapable, relieved to have decisions made for her. I set down my champagne glass carefully on the side table, the crystal making a soft click against the wood. The room tilted slightly as every eye turned to me, the birthday girl, the subject of this intervention, waiting for my reaction, tears perhaps, or grateful acceptance of their collective wisdom. Instead, I smiled. Not a warm smile of gratitude, not a defeated smile of acceptance, not the confused smile of a woman whose faculties were failing. A smile that said I'd been counting cards all along. A smile that said I'd been waiting for this exact moment, anticipating it, preparing for it. A smile that should have warned Jessica that she'd miscalculated badly. "Thank you, Jessica," I said, my voice calm and clear, cutting through the murmurs like a blade. That was quite a presentation. Truly impressive. The drama, the timing, the emotional manipulation, really very well done. But I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. Jessica's smile faltered, confusion flickering across her features. Marcus straightened suddenly, his beer bottle frozen halfway to his mouth. suddenly alert to a shift in atmosphere he hadn't anticipated. I walked slowly, deliberately, to the dining room table where I'd placed a folder earlier that morning. Gerald had prepared it meticulously, organizing evidence, documentation, recordings. My hands were steady. As I picked it up, feeling the weight of truth and justice in that simple manila folder. Before we continue this celebration, I think everyone should know the full story. Mom, what are you doing? Marcus asked, his voice uncertain. Telling the truth, I replied. I opened the folder, pulling out documents. You see, Jessica has been very busy these past 6 months, building a case, manipulating doctors, orchestrating this entire takeover, and she's been very clever about it. Jessica's face paled. Harley, you're confused. I'm not confused, I interrupted, my voice sharp. I'm angry, and I have evidence. I held up printed transcripts of recorded conversations. Jessica, do you remember telling your friend on the phone that you were almost there, that you'd get the old lady out and sell this house for $800,000? Because I have that conversation recorded. The room went silent. You could hear breathing, heartbeats. I pulled out my phone, connected it to my Bluetooth speaker, and played a 30-second clip. Jessica's voice filled the room, crystal clear. I'm almost there. The old lady's cracking. Once we get her into Sunset Hills, we can sell this place for at least $800,000. Finally, we'll have breathing room. Gasps, murmurs. Someone said, "Oh my God." Jessica's face went from pale to red. That's out of context. Marcus, tell them. But Marcus was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. I continued, my voice steady. Let me tell you about Jessica's background. This is her third marriage. Her previous two ended in divorces involving property disputes. Both ex-husbands claimed she married them for financial gain. I pulled out more documents, passing them to nearby guests. Here are complaints filed against her real estate license. Unethical behavior, pressure tactics targeting elderly clients. Here are financial records showing she and Marcus are $80,000 in credit card debt. 3 months behind on rent. Dorothy started crying. Other guests looked shocked, angry. The doctor's appointment, where she claimed I was declining. She lied. I never burned a pot. I never got lost. She manufactured those incidents to build a false medical record. The lawyer meeting, where I supposedly agreed to this plan. I was gathering evidence. I turned to Jessica directly. You thought I was a helpless old woman you could manipulate and discard. You thought you could take my home, my autonomy, my life. You were wrong. Jessica tried to speak, her voice shrill. This is insane. Marcus, are you going to let her? Let her what? Marcus said quietly. Tell the truth, Mom? I didn't know. She said you were declining, that we were helping you. You signed legal papers to have me declared incompetent, I said, looking at my son. You measured my bedroom like you already owned it. You chose to believe her lies instead of asking me directly. Marcus's face crumbled. He had no defense. I pulled out the final document, and here's the most important piece. This house is held in an irrevocable trust. My husband Robert established before he died. It cannot be sold or transferred, except under very specific circumstances that benefit me. Jessica's entire plan was built on a false assumption. She never could have taken this house. She never had any legal standing. Gerald stepped forward from where he'd been waiting in the background. Mrs. Smith has also filed a police report regarding elder abuse and financial exploitation. The evidence has been provided to the authorities and to the state bar for investigation of Jessica's professional conduct. The room erupted, guests talking over each other, some approaching me with apologies, others confronting Jessica. Jessica was screaming now, all pretense dropped. You vindictive bitch, I was helping you. You're too old to manage alone. Marcus, tell them how she is. But Marcus was silent, broken, finally seeing the truth. I walked to him, holding out a manila envelope. This contains information for divorce attorneys and documentation of Jessica's schemes. You deserve better than this, son. So do your children. He took the envelope with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know, I said softly. But sorry doesn't erase what you did. We'll talk later. Right now, I need you both to leave my home. Jessica lunged toward me, but David stepped between us, his military training evident in his stance. You need to go now. Jessica grabbed her purse, her face twisted with rage and humiliation. This isn't over, Harley. You can't. It's over, Gerald said firmly. There's a restraining order being filed as we speak. If you contact Mrs. Smith again, you'll be arrested. Leave now, or I'll call the police. Marcus helped Jessica out, both of them leaving through a gauntlet of silent, judging guests. The door closed behind them. The room remained quiet for a long moment. Then Dorothy started clapping, others joined. Soon the entire room was applauding. I stood in my living room, in my home, surrounded by people who finally saw the truth, and felt something break open inside me. Not breaking apart, but breaking free. The party dissolved after that, guests leaving with hugs and promises to stay in touch. Apologies for not seeing what was happening sooner. Dorothy stayed to help clean up. I knew something was wrong, she said, washing dishes beside me. I just didn't know how to help. You helped by being here today. I told her, by witnessing. That night, alone in my house, I sat in Robert's chair and let myself cry. Not from sadness, but from relief, from exhaustion, from the weight of months of fear finally lifting. David came downstairs bringing me tea. You were incredible today, Mom. I was desperate. I corrected. There's a difference. No, he said firmly. You were strong. Dad would be proud. I touched the arm of Robert's chair, feeling his presence. He gave me the tools, the trust, the foundation. He protected me, even after he was gone. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Gerald filed formal complaints, restraining orders, civil suits. The police investigated the elder abuse allegations, interviewing me, reviewing evidence, talking to witnesses. Jessica's real estate license was suspended pending investigation. Her professional reputation was destroyed as word spread through the community. Her previous ex-husbands came forward with similar stories, strengthening the case. Marcus called David, asking to meet with me. David acted as intermediary, vetting his intentions before I agreed. We met at a neutral location, a cafe downtown, public enough to feel safe. Marcus looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, devastated. Mom, he started, his voice breaking immediately. I don't even know where to begin. The beginning, I said calmly. Tell me how this happened. He told me everything. How Jessica had pursued him aggressively, love-bombing him with attention and affection. How she'd slowly isolated him from family and friends, always with reasonable-sounding explanations. How she'd managed their finances, hiding the debt while spending lavishly. How she'd planted seeds of doubt about my capability, framing her concerns as love. I thought I was protecting you, he said, crying openly now. She said you were declining, that you'd be safer in professional care. She showed me the doctor's notes. I believed her. You didn't ask me, I said quietly. Not once did you ask me directly how I felt, what I wanted. You just decided for me. I know, and I'll regret it forever. Mom, I'm filing for divorce. I'm leaving her. I've already moved out. Good, I said. That's a start. Can you ever forgive me? He asked desperately. I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised, the man who'd betrayed me, the broken human sitting across from me. Now, I don't know, I said honestly. I love you. I'll always love you. But trust, that takes time to rebuild. You hurt me, Marcus. Deeply. I'll do whatever it takes, he promised. Therapy, family counseling, anything. I want to make this right. Then start by taking responsibility. I told him. Not just admitting you were wrong, but actively working to understand why you believed her over me, why you were willing to discard me so easily. Figure that out, and maybe we can find our way back. He nodded, accepting the boundary I'd set. We didn't hug, we didn't make grand reconciliations, but it was a beginning, tentative, and painful. 3 months after the birthday party, I stood in a courtroom, as Jessica faced multiple charges: elder abuse, attempted fraud, ethics violations. The DA had built a strong case using my evidence and testimony from others she'd targeted. I took the stand, my testimony quiet but devastating. I described the systematic manipulation, the isolation, the manufactured medical concerns, the psychological torture of being erased from my own life. Jessica's attorney tried to paint me as vindictive, but the recordings spoke for themselves. The judge, a woman in her 60s, listened with visible anger, her jaw tight. When Jessica took the stand in her own defense, she tried charm and tears. She claimed she'd only wanted to help, that I'd misunderstood her intentions, that everything was blown out of proportion. But Gerald's cross-examination was surgical. He caught her in lie after lie, contrasting her testimony with her recorded words, with documented evidence, with her history. The judge issued a restraining order extending 3 years. She ordered Jessica to pay restitution for legal fees and emotional damages, a sum that would take Jessica years to repay. She referred the criminal charges forward for prosecution. As we left the courthouse, reporters tried to interview me, but I declined, simply walking to my car with David beside me. I wasn't interested in fame or attention. I just wanted my peace back. Jessica's final consequence came weeks later. Her real estate license was permanently revoked, her career destroyed. Her divorce from Marcus was finalized with her receiving nothing due to her documented fraud and abuse. I heard through the gossip network that she'd moved 2 towns away, working a minimum wage job, alone and disgraced. I felt no triumph in her downfall, only a quiet sense of justice. 6 months after the birthday party that changed everything, I stood in my garden, planting new roses beside the ones Robert and I had planted decades ago. My life had transformed. Marcus visited weekly now, bringing Tommy, rebuilding our relationship through therapy and honest conversations. He'd paid off most of the debt Jessica created, downsized his life, started over. We weren't fully healed, but we were healing. David called twice a week from his new station, closer to home now. He'd requested a transfer to be nearer to family, to me. Linda visited monthly, bringing her children, helping me update the house. She'd apologized repeatedly for not believing me sooner, and I'd forgiven her. She'd been overwhelmed, not malicious. Dorothy and my friend group had rallied around me, creating a protective circle. We had weekly card games again, coffee dates, book club meetings. I wasn't isolated anymore. I'd also found unexpected community through a support group. Gerald recommended other elder abuse survivors. Hearing their stories, sharing mine, realizing I wasn't alone in this experience, had been healing. And I'd done something else. I'd established a legal foundation in Robert's name, the Robert Smith Elder Protection Fund, providing free legal assistance to seniors facing exploitation by family members. It was funded partly by the restitution money from Jessica, partly by my own contributions. The foundation had already helped 3 families: an elderly man whose son was stealing his Social Security checks, a widow whose daughter-in-law was pressuring her to sign over her home, a grandfather facing false conservatorship claims. Each case we won felt like honoring Robert's memory, like using my pain for purpose. On what would have been Robert's 73rd birthday, I sat in our garden, talking to him as I often did. I kept my promise, I told him. I didn't let them take what we built. I was strong, like you said. The roses he'd planted swayed in the breeze, and I let myself believe he heard me. The encounter happened on an ordinary Tuesday. I was shopping for groceries, pushing my cart through the produce section, when I saw her. Jessica. She stood at the checkout line ahead of me, wearing cheap clothes, no makeup, her hair pulled back simply. She looked diminished, tired, older than her years. Our eyes met. For a moment, everything stopped. I saw shame flicker across her face, then anger, then fear. She quickly looked away, grabbed her single bag of groceries, and hurried out without waiting for her change. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, watching her retreat. I could have followed, could have said something cutting, could have reminded her of what she'd lost, could have savored her downfall. Instead, I finished my shopping, buying ingredients for the family dinner I was hosting that weekend. Marcus and Tommy, David via video call, Linda and her children. Later, Dorothy called with gossip. Jessica's working at that telemarketing place off Route 9. Someone saw her. Apparently, she's barely scraping by. Don't tell me anymore, I said gently. I don't need to know. Because I realized something important. Jessica's consequences weren't mine to dwell on. Her downfall wasn't my victory. My survival was. That evening, I wrote in the journal I'd kept throughout this ordeal, documenting not just the betrayal and revenge, but the healing and rebuilding. I wrote about forgiveness, not for Jessica, who'd shown no remorse, but for Marcus, who was genuinely working to change, and for myself, for the moments I doubted my worth and strength. I wrote about learning that family isn't always blood, that real love means seeing and respecting, not controlling and dismissing. I wrote about discovering that strength doesn't always look like immediate confrontation. Sometimes it looks like patience, strategy, documentation, and careful planning. Most importantly, I wrote about reclaiming my voice, my agency, my right to exist on my own terms. On my 69th birthday, exactly 1 year after the nightmare party, I hosted a small, intimate celebration. Only people who genuinely loved me were present. Marcus and Tommy, David home on leave, Linda and her family, Dorothy and close friends, and Gerald Morrison, who'd become not just my attorney, but a dear friend. The atmosphere was warm, filled with real laughter and genuine affection, the opposite of last year's tense, performative gathering. As we shared cake in the same living room, where Jessica had tried to erase me, I reflected on everything I'd learned. I'd learned that elder abuse is insidious, that it happens in nice neighborhoods to good families, that predators don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like concerned daughter-in-laws. I'd learned the importance of documentation, of legal protection, of trusting your instincts when something feels wrong. I'd learned that dignity isn't about never falling, but about how you rise. During the celebration, Marcus privately gave me a gift, a restored photograph of Robert and me from our wedding day, professionally framed with an engraved plate. To Mom, who taught me that love means protecting what matters. I'm sorry I forgot. I'll never forget again. We embraced, both crying, healing, continuing. Tommy presented a drawing he'd made of my garden, with the words Grandma's Happy Place, written in careful child's handwriting. I hung it on my refrigerator immediately. David shared news that he was being stationed just 2 hours away next year, wanting to be near family, near me. Linda announced she was naming her expected baby Harper, after my middle name. As the evening wound down and guests departed, I stood alone in my kitchen in my house surrounded by my choices and my memories, and felt profound gratitude. Not for the betrayal, but for surviving it. Not for the pain, but for the strength it revealed. Not for Jessica, but for discovering who my real family was. The sun sets through the kitchen window, casting golden light across the countertops where I've prepared thousands of meals, where I've laughed and cried and raised my family. I think about Margaret, the woman I met at Sunset Hills, who warned me not to let them trap me there. I learned later that she passed away 6 months after I met her, still in that facility, her daughter having sold her house and spent her savings. I think about her often. I think about how many others are facing what I faced. Invisible, dismissed, erased by the very people they sacrificed everything to raise. This is why I'm telling you this story. Not for revenge or bitterness, but as a warning and a roadmap. If you're watching this and you're being told you're too old, too confused, too much trouble, you're not. If your family is pressuring you to sign papers or move somewhere you don't want to go, pause. Document everything. Seek legal help. Trust your instincts. And if you're someone who loves an elderly parent or grandparent, please, see them, really see them. Don't let anyone convince you they're less capable than they are. Don't let greed or convenience erase their autonomy and dignity. I kept my house. I kept my independence. I kept my dignity. But more than that, I kept my voice. And I'm using it now to reach you, wherever you are. If this story has touched you, if you've seen yourself or someone you love in my words, please do something for me. Hit that like button, so this message reaches more people who need to hear it. Subscribe to this channel because I'll keep sharing stories that matter, truths that need telling, and most importantly, leave a comment. Tell me where you're listening from. Are you in California or Carolina? Manchester or Melbourne, Toronto or Texas. Tell me if you've faced something similar, or if you're facing it now. Tell me you're not alone. Because you're not. We're a community now, connected by these stories, by survival, by the refusal to be erased. My name is Harley Smith. I'm 69 years old. I'm a mother, a grandmother, a widow, and a survivor. This is my house. This is my story, and I'm still here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are never too old to fight for yourself. You are never too old to matter.